With no further delay, let me introduce our panelists. We have Shri Prakash Periyathambi, who's the Inspector General of Police in Kerala. He's also the Chief Investigation Officer for the Kerala State Human Rights Commission. While he's had multiple accomplishments in his illustrious career, I want to highlight a couple of his key posts and responsibilities that are particularly relevant for today's discussion. As the Nodal Officer of Cyberdrome, he's responsible for creating cyber awareness among children, parents, teachers, and the general public. He's also served as Nodal Officer for the Counter Child Sexual Exploitation Center, CCSE, a very pioneering effort in Kerala, where he's acted very decisively against online child sexual abuse and has also undertaken several capacity building initiatives for police officers, forensic scientists, counselors, prosecutors, and judges regarding this. He's also the recipient of the President's Police Medal for Meritorious Service in 2023. We have Dr. Eesha Sharma, who's an assistant professor of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry at NIMHANS. Over the past 10 years, Dr. Eesha has been working as a clinician, academician, and researcher in institutions both in India and the UK. She's been a part of several large collaborative projects, including the National Mental Health Survey of India and an India-China Mental Health Alliance on treatment gaps with mental disorders. She also leads a project under the Government of India's Nirbhaya scheme to organize school-based orientation programs on gender, sexuality, and personal safety. She's a published author with multiple articles in reputed Indian and international journals on psychiatry. And finally, we have someone who's part of ONI's extended family. Pulkit Jain is co-founder and product head at Vedantu. Vedantu is a pioneer in live and interactive online classrooms that enable students to learn with some of India's best curated teachers. Pulkit's vision is to provide access to quality education in the remotest areas by solving for the problem of quality teachers. The WAVE platform, that's his brainchild, is enabling over 1 million students to access live learning sessions every year. Pulkit is an alumnus of IIT Roorkee, but he is a teacher at heart and spends a majority of his time teaching as well as inspiring students. Thank you all for taking the time to be a part of this critical discussion. And without any further delay, I'm going to jump right into some questions. Prakash sir, we'll maybe start with you. The digital space is evolving very rapidly, and it presents a lot of new risks and threats for citizens. Children are particularly vulnerable to risks here. The CCSE is probably the first of its kind initiative at Kerala Police. Could you please tell us a little bit more about the center and what prompted you to set this up as a dedicated cell instead of maybe integrating this effort with existing infrastructure within the State Police Department?
Right. So what we did and why we did to create the CCSE, I will inform. 5 years back, I think it started in the year 2017-18. We started with a small P&D operation in 2017 to hunt for pedophiles during an operation. And 2018, we had interaction with ICMEC and NGO. There is an NGO called ICMEC, a global NGO, which is dedicated to acting against online child sexual abuse, and also Interpol. So why we did this was the crime against children in the online space is unlike any other cybercrime. I think still many states fail to understand this aspect. This is quite a different kind of problem. While the general cybercrime is often focused on financial aspects or wrongful financial gains, online child sexual abuse need not be financial at all. Oil, okay, of course, there are few sesame sellers, but generally it is not so. That is one. Other thing is, see, if an adult become a victim of a cybercrime, the adult gets to know he or she becomes a victim, and then they report to the police or use any other mechanism to address that problem. But how do the children know that they are being abused online? I don't think any children reports on online sexual abuse. So that means the law enforcement or the other stakeholders have to understand and learn about these crimes and then act. So that's why the police should have a dedicated unit. And even the skill sets of police officers involved in acting against online sexual abuse is not that of a normal cybercrime investigating officer. it's quite different. The skill sets are quite different. The emotional, the other aspects, the passion towards children, a lot of aspects are there which makes them a particularly specialist in this sphere. That's why we went for a specialist unit in Kerala Police. And of course, we had quite a few successes in the last 4 years, I see.
Sure. And could you, sir, could you maybe spend a few minutes sharing some real life cases that maybe will help the audience relate to the kind of crimes that you're now dealing with?
So I will first general what we are doing in CCSE. CCSE, what we do is, for example, we get some reports called cyber tip line reports. Cyber tip line report is a report, we get it from the MHA. Through the NCRP, National Cybercrime Reporting Portal. These reports come from an organization called NIMHANS in USA. What they do, they get it from all social media companies like Facebook, Instagram. Whenever they find out child sexual abuse photograph or any report, they collect those reports, and it is mandated upon them to report to NIMHANS by the federal government of USA. So they do that and they send it to all the countries, to the Home Affairs, Ministry of Home Affairs, and through NCRP, every state in India gets these reports. The problem is these reports have serious reports and there are many repetitions. Somebody has to screen these reports, find the serious ones, and then collect actionable intelligence on each of these reports. So many of the states don't do that. We do that. CCSE does that, does screening, does collect details about the offenders, the present location, a lot of details about the offenders, and then we use it during our P-Hunt operations, which we call pedophile hunt, which we do every few months. What we do is we collect information, actually this is all the offenders, and one stroke across Kerala, we operate and strike against them at a time. So what happens, all the pedophiles, they get caught napping, and then we try and catch them red-handed. That's what we do. One of the things. The other things, what we do much more important is we do a lot of social engineering across social media networks, in the darknet, in the Telegram. What happens is there are a lot of networks where these offenders operate. So we need to go undercover in some of the groups. We need to use a lot of social engineering things. It's a lot of passion exercise. That's again is very important, what we are doing. It is not an easy exercise. You have to do it sometimes for months, go after offender for months, and then collect. What happens, all of these persons use anonymizing tools. For example, Telegram is itself an anonymizing tool. VPN, many of the offenders use VPN, many of the offenders use darknet. So these kind of anonymizing tools, how to break and deal with them and collect the IDs, and then find the identity and then go off them. So these issues, this work we do. Apart from that, we do a lot of capacity building along with ICMEC. We do a lot of capacity building for all officers. That's again very important. Awareness, all these exercises we do. Some of the examples, some interesting examples I would like to say is, see, the offenders, they belong to all categories. You don't think it may be a very good-looking, nice speaking person. That doesn't mean that he is not a child sexual offender in an online space. What happens, sometimes some persons who have access, relatives. In a particular case, I will tell you an example. In a darknet, the CCC team went through it a few years back. This example is, they got into a chat room called Cheese Pizza. In that, child resembling a Carolite child, they have features, so South Indian children. So based on that, they went into further and collected that particular person. Individual was posting this girl's photograph or videos in all the many Telegram groups, particularly CSAM Telegram groups. And we went to undercover in that. So we chatted with this fellow, got the identity, and find out it is a telephone number of or mobile number of a lady living in Bangalore. And it is her brother who was the offender. The child was the niece of this fellow. The child, victim child, we could rescue the child. We could arrest this person. Similarly, interesting case is doctors. We arrested 3 doctors. One of the doctor was in district called Malappuram. Again, we chatted with this person. This fellow was posting some photos and videos of children. Then we chatted with this fellow. Then he revealed that he has abused a child who was his customer, who was getting treatment from him. He abused that girl, and we collected again the details. This fellow was again using VPN. So we took some time, collected this fellow, and then we arrested this person. This person was supposed to be a very popular doctor in the local area. See, that's how it is. Even a popular doctor, anybody can be this person. Another interesting case is IT scientist. The fellow was posting a lot of videos, and he was selling CSAM also. So this fellow is brilliant in the sense that when we tried to track this fellow, he was using a VPN server to mask his whereabouts. He had several Telegram accounts in the CSAM groups. And when we tried to approach him through social media, so this fellow, what he's doing, he's coded malicious codes and sent to us to break us, to identify us. So that kind of person. So finally, we got to this person and got the identity. He was a scientist working in the TCS innovation lab at Kochi. Imagine. So these kind of things do happen. So various kinds. It can be a daily wage labor. Even migrant laborers are involved. There are now CSAM sellers. So we go after all the CSAM sellers. That's what we do. There are a lot of accounts happening. There are a lot of transactions happening. So it's a huge thing. Apart from this,
sorry, apologies.
Yeah.
This is fascinating because I think it gives us a kind of understanding of the depth of issues and the challenges in resolving it. I'll come back after a few questions to Dr. Eesha and Pulkit, if that's okay with you, sir.
Definitely.
Dr. Eesha, just coming across to you. I think we're definitely seeing many instances of mental health issues that young children and adolescents are facing. It's an increased instance of it these days. What have been your observations on the impact on mental health with regard to increased internet or social media usage? What are some of the common types of issues that you are seeing that children are facing? Could you, maybe just speak about some of the issues that you're seeing broadly?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. I'm delighted to be here. Of course, this is an important piece of work, and it's lovely to see how Space to Grow is, nurturing the space so well. I'm glad that you used the term mental health, right? Because the impact is more on mental health rather than looking at it from a mental illness perspective, right? So it is difficult, so many times when parents and children ask us that, so what will it do? Am I going to fall ill? Will I develop mental illness? Will I get depressed? Will I, develop an anxiety disorder? So most of the time, the impact of spaces that children occupy and what these spaces do to children is not so much in terms of developing illnesses as in their overall, how it is shaping their individuality, how it is shaping their personality, how it is shaping their understanding about themselves in the world, right? And that's where the larger rubric of mental health, is positioned. See, if we just look at it, children in the age groups that they are maximally interacting with these spaces, so what is that age group? Probably, let's say 9-10 years upwards. I know that it is becoming younger, with every year as we pass by, but let's say maximally
Lakshmi, you're on mute.
I was just saying, I think we may have lost Dr. Eesha. Let's just give it a few seconds. Shivani, could you reach out to her, please?
Most definitely. Should we probably move on to...
in the interest of time, Pulkit, why don't I come to you, and then we'll have go back to Dr. Eesha's question once she's back online. I think Vedantu has been one of the early movers in this space, right? You're probably one of the first edtech companies to have implemented a comprehensive digital safety policy. Pulkit, what led to the decision to design and implement such a policy? And how were you able to get buy-in from your senior leadership team to implement this, especially given how startups are often juggling so many priorities, so many business priorities, and so many pressures from the external environment?
That's a very interesting question, Lakshmi, and I'm glad to be here to discuss this important topic with such, eminent people in this field, working in this field. So yes, it's not been easy, right, for an organization like Vedantu, which is a startup which is busy understanding the broader ecosystem, trying to evolve itself to serve the market. The priorities are mostly business related, right? The priorities are actions which lead to either growth in business or attention. So I think in such a scenario, that deep sense of responsibility and why this organization, came into existence in the first place, the senior leaderships coming back to that actually helped us, allocate funds to time to resources to work in the direction of ensuring safe learning environment for the children. So our philosophy has been to create, best learning environment for children across the country, from all parts of the country. And, a learning environment needs to be safe for a child to then come in happily and learn in that environment, right? So safety automatically becomes a priority. So, and then second thing was one of us getting aware about it. So I was that person, and I'm really happy that I gave heed to some of the instances which happened way back in 2019 and 20 on the platform. And I happened to talk to the parents, Chitra being one of the parent of a child learning on the Vedantu, and Chitra made me aware about what all can happen in the online spaces. And frankly, I was not aware. So my getting aware, my making my leadership, my co-founders aware, and all of us then deciding that this is very important for us to work on, led to all the work that we could do together, along with very deep support from Space to Grow. Another thing is, in my mind, it was an experiment and it remains an experiment, that what an organization can do. Because see, alone Vedantu cannot make a difference. And there was no one at that time, I think today also no one in this space in online education who is working on understanding what online safety means in online learning spaces. So for me, to a large extent, this is a piece of work which can go out to the ecosystem and can help ecosystem, make learning environment safe. So that has been one of my motivations as well.
Sure. Thanks, Pulkit. I also just want to check if Dr. Eesha is back.
I think it's...
Yeah.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
So we kind of moved to another question while you were rejoining, but please, let's go back to you and, happy to hear your response on the earlier question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And sorry about dropping off suddenly. The point that I was making is that, the age group of 10 to 17 is where children are developing in their social emotional capacities. And the main way, the main tool that children have to develop socially, to develop emotionally, is actually by interacting with different environments. You can't teach a child social skills. You can't teach a child emotional skills. It is something that has to be nurtured by, children engaging with different environments, with teachers, parents, friends, and so on. So what's happening is, now this is, a child who's still figuring out, what am I supposed to do socially? What am I supposed to do emotionally? And then they find themselves in an online space, which nobody else, most of the times, has direct access to. So the parent or the teacher or the child is not really there to kind of guide or handle this child in terms of, guiding them that this is okay to take and this is not okay to take and so on. So I think the biggest vulnerability for children's mental health arises from this very basic fact, that you're leaving a child to develop socially and emotionally in a space that nobody can really guide them in, because nobody else has access to the space that they're occupying. The other thing is that, Prakash sir was sharing with us, the profiles of some pedophiles that, they have caught and so on. So I think as a culture, we are very instructive, and, the ideas of parental authority and adult authority and the need to comply, the need to, say yes to what adults say, is so deeply rooted in a large proportion of India's children that, when there is an adult interacting with a child online or outside it, most of the times children will comply. Most of the time the child will fall into that trap because, saying no or asserting yourself is not something that is developmentally appreciated, even in the physical spaces that children occupy. Right. So I think they're developing social emotional selves combined with, this not exactly developmentally conducive need to comply with adult instruction and authority is something that creates the biggest challenge for children's mental health, in the online space.
Sure. It's a fine distinction. It is a very sensitive age group, and they're growing up. Even the physical space, there's a lot that they have to deal with. But at least that's a more familiar environment, even for caregivers. But the digital environment can be very isolating. So thank you for sharing that, Dr. Eesha. I think there's a specific question for you in the chat. Either you can choose to answer it in the chat, or we can come back to take up the question online later. Pulkit, I want to go back to what you were saying, what you finished with before we move to Dr. Eesha, that you saw this as a big experiment in a way on what all a company can kind of push itself to do and accomplish. But after you've implemented this, and I know it's been a couple of years since you implemented your policy, what has been the reaction that you've seen from different stakeholders, right? Of course, your students, but also parents or employees at Vedantu. What has been their response to this digital safety policy?
I think the response has been fabulous. So a company keeps pushing whatever it measures, right? And usually what we measure is the business outcomes. But here, interestingly, what we have done, we have started measuring things which, in this particular case, which are not related to business. So we measure, how aware our children are. We measure our POXO score. We measure about how aware our parents are. How open are our students in, coming up with with the issue that they have faced to our counselors. How open are they to talk to our counselors and the child safety team? And we have seen consistent increase and significant increase in these data points, which encourages the entire organization. Another thing which has happened is that since in a company which stands on caring for children, it's a very subjective statement that, we should all care for students. Child safety has actually given us a tool for us to create KRAs for our teachers, our counselors, our, the sales personals to really care for students and counsel them wherever the need be and understand what issues that children go through, right? And it's very interesting because this is a very interesting age group. As a teacher, what I've realized is that children between 13 to the 17, 18 age group, their mathematical brain actually evolves very fast. They're able to solve actually complex mathematical problems. So they can solve technical issues, they can go into the digital stuff and figure it out. But their emotional brains have not evolved by that age. Dr. Eesha definitely understands that much more deeply. But with my limited understanding, they get exposed to so much, but they don't know how to figure it out. They don't know how to assimilate that. They don't know how to, discuss about that. And, my team to a large extent has been there now to help them out whenever they reach out to us. And these are the things which we really motivate us as a team, keep us going in the right direction.
Sure. I mean, I want to pick up a thread from what you said and maybe ask this of all of you from different points of view, right? When you said you measure awareness levels of children and parents, but I think from the study, we understand that, only 40% or 45% of the parents even said they may reach out to law enforcement, for example, in case they are faced with any digital harms that their children face. And the number that actually end up reporting may be far lesser. So that's on the reporting side. When we looked at, parents do think that children will reach out to them, whereas children often, Ritika mentioned this, that she will probably either sort it out herself or reach out to her friends to sort it out, right? But what can be some of, Dr. Eesha, just to start with you, but if parents have to be more involved and able to support, what are early signs that parents or caregivers can watch out for with, children and adolescents? And then I kind of want to pose different questions on the same topic to Prakash sir and Pulkit. But first, what can we watch out for?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think, and this is kind of related to the response that I was typing in the to the question asked on the window. See, I think the parent's role actually starts from the time the child is for the first time socialized to the online space, right? So it's, I mean, a lot of times by the time the child and the family come to you, a lot of water has flown under the bridge, and a lot has happened, and complications are there, and the entire relationship between the parent and the child has become quite strained. So then it all becomes to first to actually restore that relationship and then start working. But having said that, for all parents who are listening to this and who are keen on assisting their children be safe in the online space, start with socializing your child. And by socializing, probably children as young as 1 and 1.5 year old these days have access to the online space, right? Because every child is listening to rhymes, every child is watching some cartoon or something. So it begins then, right? So at that young age, of course, what is your child watching? Does the child have, can the child scroll themselves, or are you setting limits on what the child can do and so on? So it's a very, very physical control. As the child grows up, what you're trying to do is stay updated about what are the sites, what are the apps, and probably have a very open attitude to everything that the child brings to you. Soon as the parents start responding in terms of don't do this, stop doing that, so any don't and stop and no, I mean, they are generally not great parenting strategies, whether in the online or offline space. So rather than that, parents taking a very curious and open stance as to what is that space or what is that app or website doing for the child, and then engaging in discussions about what that actually means for the child and their well-being and so on. Now, while parents are engaging in this, some of the early signs that can tell us that something's going wrong is it's a really hard question, because it's this, again, these are not signs of illness, these are not signs of so do I look for my child being disinterested? Do I look for my child crying? So these are not illness signs. But what are you looking for? You're looking for any change in your child's regular repertoire of behavior. So if your child's becoming quieter, or if they are becoming more irritable, or if they are having trouble sleeping, or if they seem particularly preoccupied with a certain theme. And you'll be able to spot that if you're any way, involved in your child's life. And most of the time, the trouble happens that, so 24 hours in a day, 18 hours, the parents and the child don't really know what the other person's doing. And so then when we ask parents that, when did you get to know about this? And the child tells us, oh, this has been going on for the last year. And, the parents had no clue. So especially for the online space, and, the funny thing is that when it comes to the physical space, parents do exactly this. So when they're teaching the child to cross the road, when they're teaching the child to go to school, what should you do in school? What should you say to your teacher? How should you say it? We teach all of that, right? But somehow none of these skills are taught when, it comes to the online space. So I would encourage parents to be as involved in the online space as you are in the physical space. Just because a child can press buttons and something will happen on its own, and, all these companies are becoming increasingly intuitive in their tech designs and stuff over time, it doesn't mean that you don't have to be physically there. You have to be physically there,
Sure,
while your child is engaging, and then watch for any change, right? Because these are not illness signs, these are mental health or the lack of it signs.
Sure. Pulkit, there's a question for you in the chat box if you want to respond to it, but I'm going to quickly, take the last few minutes. I know we have like only 6 minutes left to wrap the webinar, but I want to ask quickly, Prakash sir, that what, and this also refers to a question in the chat box, what can, how can parents, caregivers, or children be empowered to seek more support from law enforcement? What can the ecosystem also do to make this more accessible so that we are actually able to, track and, chase these crimes rather than this being resolved by themselves?
Yeah. One, there is a definitive lack of awareness among children, parents, teachers, anyone in the ecosystem. The lack of awareness and a bit of stigma also. Why go to the police? Should we go to the police? All these kind of things. And I think there is a lacking on the part of police as well. and creating systems encouraging to outreach to the children, to the parents. And it is always a multi-stakeholder system here. For example, the NGOs, for example, CCSE operates along with NGOs, along with a lot of NGOs. For example, a local NGO called Bodhini is very active here. So they connect to us whenever the victim comes to them, or any calls comes to them. It's not alone to the police systems. For example, report. Now we have, of course, those who are parents or children who have access to online. The NCRP is there, National Cybercrime Reporting Portal. Of course, you can report there. The 112 is there. The 112 number. Now you can email. You can do a lot of things in 112. You can. It's not alone calling. You can report to any means, even by a message or anything. So you can use those means. And I think the formal systems needs to evolve. This should become a curriculum or a teaching thing within the school system. From the primary school itself, what is good touch, what is bad touch, about online also, online safety for primary school students. We talked how they get exposed very early in their lives, all the children actually. In the middle school they get exposed to some other different systems. So every child needs to be aware of what is wrong, talking to strangers online, what are the risks available. And most of the times the children, what happens, they feel very guilty. They don't feel like a victim. They feel very guilty, as if they have done something wrong. It is not the perpetrator who has done something wrong. Contrarily, they feel like they have done something wrong. I think this is one of the major problems. Why they don't report to a parent, why they don't report to a teacher, rather to their only to the peers. I think that needs to be told to children. You are victims and you are not committed any guilt or offense.
No, I definitely, and I think referring right back to the beginning of the webinar, when Ritika said there's so much that they can gain from the internet, there are so many positive experiences, but there are also negative experiences. And instead of, I think, reacting completely adversely to the negative experiences, it's important to kind of face this head on, build more awareness and agency among all stakeholders. And I think, as you said, so at the end of the study, I think one of the things that's standing out really is this is a problem that needs different stakeholders, be it primary caregivers like parents and teachers, of course, children being at the center of it, but also mental health professionals, law enforcement, civil society organizations, technology companies, which have a child-facing product or service. All of them need to work together, because this is the problem is not going to go away anytime soon. It's something that all of us need to come together to work together towards. But I this is been such a rich and enlightening conversation. I think we could have an hour-long conversation with each of you and still not have explored the depth of the issue and what is being done. But thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with the participants on the webinar. And really, thank you so much for leading the charge on digital safety in your respective fields. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to hand it back to Chitra to deliver a closing note